Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, we are going to explain on the roles and responsibilities of Sharia Advisory Board, SAB, or Sharia Advisory Council, SAC, and Sharia Committees, SC, in Islamic financial institutions. Sharia Advisory Board, SAB, or Sharia Advisory Council, SAC, refers to an independent body of specialized jurists entrusted with the duty of directing, reviewing, supervising, and approving the activities of Islamic financial institutions in order to ensure the establishment of Sharia rules and principles. The SAB or SAC is established to support the Sharia governance system. Sharia governance system can be defined as a set of institutional and organizational arrangements to oversee Sharia compliance aspects in Islamic financial institutions. Islamic financial institutions in different countries are practicing different Sharia governance system generally. The regulations and standards that are being followed by each country will determine the roles and responsibilities of SAB or SSC and Sharia committees in specific. Hence, this research is conducted to analyze and compare the roles and responsibilities of Sharia Advisory Board or Sharia Advisory Council and Sharia committees in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei Darussalam.
The range of roles and duties of Sharia advisor includes giving advice to Islamic financial institutions on matters pertaining to Sharia issues. Second, involved in designing the framework for the establishment of an Islamic financial institution. Third, monitoring the activities and proceeds of the institution. Fourth, developing product and underlying contracts. Fifth, acting as a reference on Sharia matter to Islamic financial institution specifically and the Islamic financial industry in general. The main roles of Sharia committee are: first, responsibility and accountability; second, advice to the board and bank including the bank subsidiaries; third, endorse Sharia policies and procedures; fourth, endorse the validates relevant documentation; fifth, access work carried out by Sharia review and Sharia audit.
The next component of Sharia Committee is Sharia Research Function. This function is responsible to conduct research regarding the Sharia issues in Islamic financial institutions, businesses, and advise the relevant parties in the product development, which will be based on the Sharia Committee's decisions. Sharia Research Function will propose the Sharia concepts that might be used and analyze the risk exposure faced by particular products. Then, it will effectively monitor its performance regularly and manage the products. Lastly, the Sharia Secretariat is there to help the Sharia committees to perform their duties. It will assist them in coordinating the meetings, managing the proposal papers, and recording the decisions of Sharia committee.
Next, the Sharia risk management function at minimum must firstly integrate Sharia non-compliant risk consideration with enterprise-wide risk management. Secondly, identify Sharia non-compliant risk exposure in the business operation and activities of the Islamic financial institution. Thirdly, assess Sharia non-compliant risk and measure the potential impact of the risk exposure to the Islamic financial institution. Fourthly, establish appropriate risk mitigation measures. Fifth, monitoring Sharia non-compliant risk exposure and effectiveness of risk mitigation measure. Six, report to the board Sharia Committee and senior management on the Sharia non-compliant risk exposure. Last but not least, constructively challenge decisions that may give rise to the Sharia compliance risk.
Okay, my name is Farah Nabila. I will proceed with the components of Sharia Committee. First is Sharia Review Function that conduct regular assessment on the compliance of the operation, business, affair and activities of the Islamic financial institution with Sharia requirement. The Sharia review function at minimum must identify, assess and monitor the compliance of the Islamic financial institution business operation activities with Sharia, then report to the board. Then ensure adequate training and guidance and provided to the officer of an Islamic financial institution on relevant Sharia requirement governing the operation, business, affair and activities. Second is Sharia audit function that provide an independent assessment on the quality and effectiveness of the Islamic financial institution, internal control, risk management system, governance process as well as the overall compliance of their operation, business, affair and activities with Sharia. Minimum must establish an audit methodology to assess the risk profile of each auditable area and generate an audit plan for the assignment to be performed. Islamic financial institution must ensure that its internal auditor who perform the Sharia audit function are qualified to perform internal audit and have the requisite knowledge on Sharia requirement applicable to Islamic financial business.
In Chapter 3, we will explain on the research methodology used in conducting this research paper. First, in this research paper, we decided to use secondary data in conducting our research due to the limited time and financial resources. Since the independent Sharia advisors had already been appointed since 1983 and the Sharia Advisory Board was established in the next 14 years, there are tons of articles, journals, and research papers regarding our topic are available in the search engine. Moreover, this type of data is accessible and spans longer time period as well as wider geographical locations, which will include the Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam information as well. After that, we implement the qualitative analysis in this research paper where we analyze the Sharia governance system and the guidelines followed by each Islamic financial institutions in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei. We compare the data analyzed between these countries to find out the similarities and differences between them in specific. And lastly, we will describe and explain the impact of Sharia governance system practiced by each country and provide recommendations to ensure a better performance in the future. Throughout this study, we find out that even though secondary data is easier to be found and accessed, but most of them require a lot of investment. Moreover, most of the data provided are containing only general information on the literature review, which will be considered insufficient in understanding the concepts and functions of Sharia committees. Therefore, we decided to refer to our textbooks where where it will provide a detailed explanation and broader views on these topics. The textbooks are considered as a top level of reference.
Appointment of the Sharia Committee. Those three countries, Malaysia, Indonesia and Brunei, have same procedure in appointment of Sharia Supervisory Board, which is the appointment of Sharia Advisory Council should be approved by Central Bank or Ministry of Finance in one side and approved by the General Meeting of Shareholders. In Malaysia, the appointment and reappointment of a Sharia committee member shall obtain prior written approval of the bank and the Sharia Advisory Council. In Indonesia, the procedure to appoint Sharia Advisory Board is the bank is obligated to submit proposal on candidates member of SSB for Bank Indonesia approval before this member hold their position. And appointment of SSB members by the shareholder general meeting is effective after Bank Indonesia approval is obtained. While in Brunei, the General Assembly of Shareholders are appointed the Sharia Supervisory Board and also recommended by the Board of Directors meeting. Okay, next, qualification of the Sharia Committee. Qualification in Malaysia and Indonesia have required certain and specific criteria regarding SSB. The five Islamic banks in Malaysia and five Islamic banks in Indonesia through their profile disclose this qualification so that the background of education and experience as Sharia Supervisory Board is known. In Malaysia, Sharia Committee is accordance with the Sharia Governance Framework (BNM), which shall be a Muslim, shall hold at least a bachelor degree in Sharia, which is include studying in usul fiqh or fiqh muamalat, and also will be able to demonstrate strong written and verbal Arabic skills and good understanding in Bahasa Malaysia and English, can include expert from relevant backgrounds such as finance and law, and last but not least, various backgrounds in terms of qualification, experience and knowledge. In Indonesia, Bank Bukopin Syariah does not disclose the profile of SSB. Even the chairman of SSB is prominent Islamic scholar, but it should disclose the education background and experience. But in Brunei, there are no specific appointment requirement for Sharia Financial Supervisory Board, but the board member will be the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance, the Mufti Kerajaan of Brunei Darussalam, six member appointed by His Majesty the Sultan, and the deputy of board appointed by Ministry of Finance with Sultan approval.
Okay, now we move to product process flow. For Malaysia, it has two products, which is pre-product approval and post-product approval. Okay, for pre-product approval, it is a process of product structuring and developing prior to introduction to the market. And the post-product approval is a process after the product has been offered to the customer. In Indonesia, daily implementing agencies must acknowledge issue or new product and discuss for 20 days and submit the overall result of the discussion for approval of the National Sharia Council in plenary. Meanwhile, for Brunei, its approval from the Sharia Financial Supervisory Board for its submission that its Islamic product complies to Hukum Syarak before getting into any business transaction with respect to it. This unit include pre-transaction Sharia compliance evaluation and in-depth research on Sharia issue related to the product structure. Okay, now Sharia review and audit. In Malaysia, Sharia review refer to regular assessment of the Sharia compliance by qualified Sharia officer in the activity and operation of the Islamic financial institution, while Sharia audit refer to the periodic assessment conducted from time to time that provide an independent assessment. Then, Indonesia do not have legislation on Sharia review and Sharia audit yet, but use Sharia Supervisory Board that emphasis is placed on evaluating bank operation from the perspective of Sharia compliance. Apart from this, the Brunei operation which authorized by the AMBD, SABD or SFSB and enforced from time to time by the bank.
Okay, the next is Sharia governance. In Malaysia, Bank Negara Malaysia Syariah Governance Framework consists of 6 sections that state the IFS are free to establish their own Syariah governance framework as long as it meet the basic requirement of the guidelines. An IFS Syariah Governance Framework shall at a minimum comprise the following: first, oversight of the board on Syariah compliant aspect of all of the overall operation of the IFS. However, Indonesia does not have any Sharia governance framework. Central Bank give detailed rule by issuing circular letter to all commercial bank conducting business based on Sharia principle in Indonesia. One of the circular letter for Sharia bank is good corporate governance and Sharia window under conventional bank, that is Bank Indonesia legislation. Okay, why in Brunei, the FSSB of the AMBD has not yet developed any clear Sharia governance and enforcement system. They make reference to the guideline issuing by Bank Negara Malaysia, BNM, as well as Labuan Offshore Financial Service Authority, LOFSA. Okay, the next point is legislative infrastructure. In Malaysia, the recent amendment to the 1958 Central Bank Act feature enhance the existing Islamic finance legislative infrastructure, including the 1983 Islamic Banking Act, the 1984 Takaful Act, and the 1983 Government Funding Act. Okay, for the Indonesia, the law number 21 of 2008 regulates Sharia banking. The law of number 10 of 1998 that conventional banks are allowed to have UUS, that is Sharia Unit, Bank Indonesian Regulation, BBI, Implementation for Sharia Commercial Bank and Sharia Business Unit. And Bank Indonesia Regulation number 11 March 2009, which is about a full-fledged Sharia bank. Okay, last but not least, in Brunei, domestic in Islamic and conventional banking activities are governed by the Islamic Banking Act 1999 and the Banking Order 2006 under the supervision of the Ministry of Finance, Financial Institution Division. Okay.
For the final slide is conclusion, which is the Sharia Committee play very important roles in ensuring good Sharia governance. An effective Sharia governance framework require involvement of the Sharia Committee as the key player, the government as the regulatory body, the Islamic financial institution as the implementer, and also to the other person relevant to the business, such as auditors, accountants, and lawyers. It is important for Sharia committee not to be influenced by the management. Sharia Advisory Board or Sharia Advisory Council and Security Committee ensure a sound Islamic practice is provided in the Islamic financial institution. This will enhance the public confidence toward Islamic financial institution as well as enhancing the safeguarding of interest and the right of shareholder and able to ensure the fairness among the stakeholder where the transparency and accountability exists. The role of Sharia board in Malaysia and Indonesia do not differ greatly from one another. Malaysia government play a proactive role by issuing Sharia governance framework in January 2011 and giving chance to the industry to adjust within 6 months. Brunei and Indonesia from legislation framework can be said still in developing corporate governance for Islamic bank. The most important thing is whatever kind of legislation that is settled by central bank is the willingness of industry to follow the regulation. That's all from our presentation about role and responsibility of Sharia Advisory Board or Sharia Advisory Council and Sharia Committee in Islamic financial institution between Malaysia, Indonesia and Brunei. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.